All right. Good. Yes.
Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the City of Delray Oaks City Council, Tuesday, April 23rd, and we're here at Charlie Benson Memorial Hall in Delray Oaks. Kim, can you please do roll call?
Councilmember Gagliardi.
Here.
Councilmember Littell.
Here.
Councilmember Getzel.
Here.
Vice Mayor Clark. Mayor Kerr.
Here. And Reverend Helen. Oh, I'm sorry. Beth, would you start us with the Pledge of Allegiance? I'm consistent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Reverend Helen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I may, I'd just like to announce that Thursday is the National Day of Prayer. Some of us will be gathering around the flagpole to pray and pray for the nation, so everybody's invited to join us if you wish. Almighty God, you have commanded all people to pray for those set in authority over us, so may you bless this city council with your wisdom and give them discernment, empower them to make good decisions and do good things, and bless in a similar way all the other citizens joined here, because unlike some other countries, we're governed by fellow citizens, not by kings or princes or potentates, and thank you for that. Thank you for your presence here. Amen.
Thank you. So before we actually get started, I just wanted to point out some new fun toys that we have. We have new microphones, we have a new camera, we have a new speaker system, so there should be absolutely no reason you can't hear us talk. Kim has individual control, so she can turn me down and Alex up or whatever. So I just want to say a big thanks to Dino and the city staff for making that happen. So. And another change you may notice is we've pulled the public comments to the beginning of the meetings. That way, we had a mom that needed to leave early last meeting, and so this way you can get your comments in about any topic that is not on the agenda beforehand. So what I'd like to do is open that up now for public comments, 3 minutes on any topic not on the agenda.
Okay, I've been advised that you're going to tell me I can't talk about this, so I don't know. Let me see here. I love seeing approve joining Monterey Bay Community Power on the agenda. Is that true? I can't bring that up?
Let's bring that up a little later.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Great. Well, thank you. Public comments are closed. Our first presentation I'm very excited about. One of our Mayor's Advisory Committees for the Arts will be led by our very own Patrice Vecchione, who is a local author, poet, and artist. And she's going to come and help celebrate April as Poetry Month. Would you like to come up? I'll do that.
In the mid-1990s, the United States and certain cities around the country declared April as National Poetry Month. What a city that celebrates National Poetry Month, and now we are. And I have a poem for everybody that I would like to pass out to you, and then I will read it to you. It sort of has a dual purpose tonight, this poem. One purpose is to celebrate National Poetry Month, and the other is Earth Day. So I'd like to give these to the council as well. Here you go. And as soon as you have that poem, I will go ahead and read it to you. It is in honor of the 200th birthday of the poet Walt Whitman. He's considered the grandfather of American poetry. This is from a many hundred-page poem. I will only read you a brief excerpt. from Song of Myself. Over the dusky green of the rye as it ripples and shades in the breeze, scaling mountains, pulling myself cautiously up, holding on by low scragged limbs, walking the path worn in the grass and beat through the leaves of the brush. Where the quail is whistling betwixt the woods and the wheat lot, where the bat flies in the 7th month eve, where the great gold bug drops through the dark, where the brook puts out of the roots of the old tree and flows to the meadow, where trip hammers crash, where the press is whirling its cylinders, wherever the human heart beats with terrible throes under its ribs, where the she-whale swims with her calf and never forsakes it, where the steamship trails hindways its long pennant of smoke, where the fin of the shark cuts like a black chip out of the water. So this was America 200 years ago, and many of these things are America still, and may they always be so. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to take a quick moment to read the proclamation that this is the National Poetry Month of 2019. Whereas the Academy of American Poets established the month of April as National Poetry Month in 1996, and whereas National Poetry Month seeks to highlight the extraordinary legacy and ongoing achievement of American poets, introduce Americans to the pleasures and benefits of reading poetry, bring poets and poetry to the public in immediate and innovative ways, make poetry an important part of our children's education, and whereas, as National Poetry Month, under the leadership and direction of the Academy of American Poets, is now the largest literary celebration in the world, and whereas poetry enhances and enriches the lives of all Americans, and whereas poetry, as an essential part of the arts and humanities, affects every aspect of life in America today, including education, the economy, and community pride and development. And whereas poetry has produced some of the nation's leading creative artists and has inspired other artists in fields such as music, theater, film, dance, and the visual arts. Now therefore, I, Allison Kerr, Mayor of Delray Oaks, do hereby proclaim April 1 through April 30 as National Poetry Month. I call upon public officials, educators, librarians, and all the people of Delray Oaks to observe this month to celebrate the cultural riches of community has to offer, and to recognize the important role poetry has in creating and sustaining this great nation with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 23rd day of April in the year 2019. Okay, now we're moving on to a presentation about community human services with Marta Sullivan.
Marta's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm Devin Corpus. I'm the Senior Program Officer, and we have some cookies to pass around.
It's a good meeting to come to.
Right?
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'll just grab that. I'm not going to go through all of this, so we're going to keep it short, but this is Community Human Services' 50th year, so we're celebrating it. This is a big moment here in Monterey County for this nonprofit. Robin is our CEO. She's been with the agency for 26 years, a long time, and we're just really excited to celebrate this 50th year, and also all of our members of our JPA. And Delray Oaks, it has been one of those members, very active member with Pat. These are all of our JPA member agencies. Our mission, we work with folks in Monterey County. We have an addiction side of the house, And then we have a youth and family services side of the house. I'm the senior program officer over all of our youth and family services, so our homeless youth shelter over in Monterey. I also have a clinic in Seaside and a clinic in Salinas. And over those parts of the agency that I supervise, we have outpatient mental health. We have about 500 children, individuals, families, couples that we see on average, which is a lot. We do domestic violence classes, parent education classes, supervised visitations. We work really closely with Department of Social and Employment Services for Pathways to Safety. We have a lot of stuff going on. On our substance abuse side of the house, we have Genesis House, which is our residential substance abuse facility. We have a newly licensed women's residential substance use program, Elm House. We have outpatient treatment centers in Salinas and Monterey. We also have our methadone clinic over in Salinas as well. These are the family service centers that I was mentioning earlier. And one of our big areas that I'm really proud of is all of our work with the schools that we've been doing. We have a lot of schools that are now individually contracting with us to provide clinicians in the schools through our Super Kids, Super Teens program. And every year we're getting more contracts from schools that are reaching out and saying, we really want your help, and asking us to come back and renewing it, and it's just super important. So we would like to present this plaque to our Delray Oaks JPA members. Thank you. And also, I'm going to be handing out these save the date cards to go around for tomorrow. We have our partner appreciation breakfast. Later in July, we have our annual luncheon, and in October, we have a really nice 50th anniversary gala at the Marriott in Monterey. So that's it. See, short and sweet. Wow. There we go.
Thank you.
It was a great presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you. I do want to mention that this is the 50th anniversary for Community Human Services, and of helping those who are suffering from addiction, mental illness, and homelessness. And Robin McCrae, who is our CEO, as Devin said, is 26 years. She's done an outstanding job. And she recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award at this year's Child Abuse Prevention Council meeting. And so congratulations to Robin.
Thank you for the important work you do. Presentation number C, I'd like to introduce Rich Deal, who will be talking about the Highway 218 and 4-tag update.
Thank you, Mayor Kerr and members of the council, and also to the previous presenters for setting the tone with cookies and a poem for this corridor study. And yes, corridor studies are boring, but this one is intended to offset what you normally hear from Caltrans, which is, no, you can't do that, no, we can't build that, no, we don't have any money. The whole purpose of this corridor study, which spans all the way to the beach, so 2 cities, Seaside and Delray Oaks, is to capture funding that's available through Senate Bill 1. So there's a lot of money that's available on a competitive basis, and the corridor study is required for any agency that wants to apply for a chunk of the competitive funds. So this study is all concept-based. Nothing is approved. That's why it's a presentation tonight. There's nothing to approve. So if there's a section of the corridor on Highway 218, Canyon Delray, that you wish to do, once this corridor study is adopted by the TAMC board next month, there'll be an opportunity to apply for the next cycle. And that starts the normal project process of thinking about what do we want to build, and go into an environmental process for each of those projects, and then finally into construction. So there's plenty of opportunities to change stuff. You know, you can target one thing, you can leave something else off. It has a lot of flexibility, but it is required to capture SB1 funding. So what I'd like to do is walk through the improvements that are specific to each intersection along Canyon Del Rey in the city of Del Rio, starting at Highway 68. And I know some of you did come to the public outreach last March. Guys, it's been a year already, which is crazy, and that just shows some of the things that we showed folks. We broke it up in different segments to make it more bite-sized. And so each of these intersections that I'm going to go through quickly, because I'm hoping to get a cookie, is one of those stages. And we'll have short-term, long-term things. So this is at the very east end, and this is Starbucks, where most of you go. And this is where the new roundabout is going to be built as part of the 68 improvements. And the short-term proposal is to put in bike lanes along the length of this. And then a longer term, or this is midterm, is to create a mixed-use path. So you could actually walk or bike along the south side all the way to Stone Creek, which I think would be terrific. There's the roundabout. Next piece, going easterly. Again, these are short-term, the bike lanes, and you can see some of the areas where we don't have sufficient width, so we have to work on widening the roads. That's a great place to do a grant application. The next segment east, this is the long-term improvements for the mixed-use path. Segment 3, this goes to the General Jim Moore Boulevard. Again, the short term is the bike lanes. The long term is to upgrade the intersection to provide ramps, curb extensions, and sidewalk and crosswalk, so you could actually cross there if you wanted to. And then segment 4 has City Hall right here, and this is Carlton. So short term is the four-tag connection, which has the trail through the Frog Pond and the possibility of a tunnel under 218, and then the mixed-use path that goes up the west side of Carlton all the way up to Plumas. Long term, again, has the mixed-use path that goes all the way down to Stone Creek, and on the bike lane on the other side with a retaining wall. This bus stop may move forward a little bit. And then right here at Work Avenue, we looked at realigning the crosswalk, so it made the length of it shorter, so there's less exposure for pedestrians, and adding a crosswalk warning system in there that's activated by a push button. And here you can see long-term, there's a raised median for a pedestrian and bike refuge area, and then widening the bike lanes and putting in a retaining wall. It gives us the ability to do that. From Rosita to Canyon, there's a connection here. We wanted to do, I think there's a bus stop here that we want to do a path around it, so you're not walking out in the street. And then this connection, this pedestrian connection that goes over here to this sidewalk. There's a little bit here, a little bit there, so it just fills in the gap. Segment 6, this is the long term, again, extending the retaining wall and the bike lane, widening the bike lane so it's safer. And then here we have where the four-tag trail comes up in its new configuration across the front of Safeway, and then to a protected intersection where we'll have bike connections across Fremont Street. And that just shows the alignment of how pedestrians and bikes would go across the intersection. And this is the big squiggly map that shows the blue four-tag trail that goes into the park, and the green part is a mixed-use path that goes on the north side of North Fremont Street up to Casanova with protected intersection with for bikes and peds, and the new median cycle tracks that Monterey is building. So very, very exciting. We do long-term want to extend these cycle tracks all the way through Seaside to Broadway, that links up with their new project, which is so well done. But we do have to get through Caltrans on this. They're not ready for this kind of an advancement in bike services. So we'll keep pushing on that. And then this is the next step. So city councils will be seeing this. I know City of Seaside's going to see the same presentation, but in the Seaside section. And then anything that any of the public or the council wants to add to this, we're happy to throw it in there. And we'll be looking for funding in the very next cycle. And we're open for any questions you have.
Any council questions? Any public questions?
Great.
Thank you very much.
You know, I do have one.
Oh, excuse me.
I'd like to thank you for the presentations that they've been giving us all along the little bus ride that I took.
Yeah.
In 218 was interesting. And just most recently, down at the park, the Fortag was there showing with the proposed Fortag. And so I think that's all very good. Thank you so much.
Yeah. you're welcome. Thank
Rich
you.
just won a very prestigious national award. I had written it down, but now I've forgotten. It was very long.
Thank you. You're very kind.
And so for your work on the Holman Highway roundabout. So we're grateful to have him on our team.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, staff reports.
Thank you. Mayor and Council, we recently completed installation of the new audio and video system the mayor mentioned earlier, and I just wanted to thank Kim and Karen for all the hard work pulling that together. It's a significant improvement.
Yes.
And it is a karaoke quality audio system.
Just in case.
Just in case. Our 2019 street reconstruction project will begin in the weeks ahead. Staff and Tyker Construction are putting the finishing touches on a notice to the public that will go out by mail. It is this, and you'll be getting that, which has a schedule of construction, the nature of the work to be done, and a point of contact at the city for you to reach out to with any questions you might have. It's going to be pretty intrusive work based on the type of, the quality of the streets. It's our worst streets, and they're going to be completely torn up and rebuilt. They're going to be beautiful and new when they're done, but the nature of the work to do the reconstruction is pretty invasive. Please help us communicate with members of the public. We'll be posting this notice online in the kiosks, as well as hanging it door to door for the affected areas, but we can never over-communicate this one, so please give us a hand. The Ford Administrative Committee met to discuss the fiscal year 19 and 20 capital improvement projects list, the transition planning ongoing with FORA, and potentially bonding against future property tax increment to complete building removal of the blight that remains on the former Fort Ord, mainly in the cities of Seaside and Marina. The FORA Board is planning a public workshop on May 8th to focus on transportation projects, and have asked that the Administrative Committee join them in that meeting. And there will be important work going forward throughout this year on transition planning with FORA, and we look forward to bringing those transition agreements to study sessions here at the council as they take shape. We met with prospective cannabis businesses wishing to locate in our city. This is becoming a fairly regular occurrence based on the fact that we've established ourselves as a business-friendly environment with a stable regulatory framework, a favorable tax rate, and a small but agile staff. Our challenge continues to be room for these businesses, and so they continue to go out and seek space in our light industrial area to locate. Staff received 4 proposals for website redesign and services, and a selection panel reviewed one of the proposals today online with the company that would do it. It's going to be a significant improvement, whoever we go with, over what we have right now, and it's going to be a lot more functionality and a lot more intuitive for you to access information on our website, which is going to be terrific. Much more searchable, much more mobile-friendly capability. We hope to complete reviewing all the proposals and make a decision in the month of May, late in the month of May. and then begin implementation. We will likely have a new website for you to actually be using by late summer. TAMC held a FORTAG public outreach meeting at the Delray Oaks Park several weeks ago on a Saturday. Chief Hoyne, Sergeant Guzman, and I participated from the staff in a 2-hour Q&A that was done by TAMC and the consultant team, which was terrific. Good questions were asked by residents about the project. Staff published a job opening for a part-time administrative clerk here at the city, a 20-hour position, based on the increased workload that we have for administrative staff. We've already received 9 applications for that part-time position, which is terrific. Staff met with our economic development consultant concerning the potential ground lease of the former RV storage park to a cannabis business, and we're armed with a good framework, thank you, David, for negotiations with businesses on a ground lease. Denise Duffy sent in the city's annual progress report on the housing element. To our knowledge, that's the first annual progress report ever submitted by the city of Delray Oaks on its housing element. We look forward to submitting more. Staff met with our economic development consultant, Mayor Kerr, and Councilmember Gagliotti concerning a draft proposal for a revised option agreement, which I will touch on a little bit during a briefing later in the agenda. Staff, Mayor Kerr, and Councilmember Gagliotti were briefed by the Callahan General Manager considering the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. It was a good Q&A. I participated in a meeting organized by the mayor and local businesses at Rowland & Associates. Approximately half a dozen local businesses were represented and came for a good Q&A about the city's plans to help remedy the regional water supply problem, increase the amount of space we have for businesses to locate here, questions about parking, questions about the airport road. It was a terrific Q&A. Thank you, Mayor, for putting that on and inviting me. Staff submitted a letter to FORA proposing a payment schedule, including the council-approved $211,000 payment and reduced interest rate of approximately 2%, and then a payment schedule of $15,000 per month until the loan is paid off. If approved by the FORA board, this proposal will save the city approximately $90,000 in interest. The interest rate would be retroactively applied to the total loan amount, which would be terrific. Public Works repaired a pothole in Rosita, completed tree trimming near the garden center, what now look like telephone poles. Unfortunately, it's not the most handsome-looking tree trimming, but it's effective given the fact that those trees were blowing over, damaging property, homes, and potentially injuring people during our windstorms. So great work by Public Works there. Kim and Karen published The Acorn, which I believe should be in your hands. If not, it will be imminently. The Pony Express is putting it out. The Peace Officers Association of Monterey County held its annual Administrative Employee of the Year dinner last Friday. Ron Fucci, our Public Works employee, was recognized by Chief Hoyne in our police department as our Public Works or Administrative Support Employee of the Year. Ron's wife Denise, as well as Kim, Karen, and I joined our PD at the dinner for Ron's recognition. Was very well deserved. He was very surprised. It was good. And finally, tomorrow is National Administrative Professionals Day, and while Karen and Kim are far more than administrative professionals in my eyes, please join me in giving them a great round of applause. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. Councilman Gagliotti?
So the Monterey One board meeting was pushed till next week pending or due to the preceding Easter week, so we didn't meet with the executive board. However, I've been recently appointed to the Recycled Water Committee. This committee oversees the current Pure Water Monterey project and the expansion that might occur, or any expansion that might occur. We execute on minute details of the larger water board decisions. Last Wednesday, 4/18, we got detailed updates on water source developments for the Pure Water Monterey project on the Blanco drain, the reclamation ditch, the advanced water purification construction, and the Seaside Basin injection wells, as well as with all with all infrastructure project. The project components are individually complex. They must be managed simultaneously. The trick for the project managers or the project manager is to coordinate these component schedules so that they finish coincidentally. If they're successful, the combined project will come online seamlessly and on schedule. Monterey One is one of the more solid teams that I've ever worked with. We're lucky to have them because their skills are heavily in demand in the state and elsewhere. However, the recent wet weather has pushed the Pure Water Monterey project online date by several weeks. The current schedule is now late Q4, the fourth quarter instead of Q3. There are two looming concerns in the water purveyor community regarding the cease and desist order end date. One is the cliff of 2021, and the other is the water allocation ramp down. That is the schedule of the cease and desist order from now until then. The delivery of water to the Seaside Basin by the Pure Water Monterey project is an important part of that transition schedule. The Monterey One team is fully committed to meeting the role and confident that they will be delivering water by 2020. The Recycled Water Committee also approved the first $156,000 of projects and studies to support the Pure Water Monterey expansion / backup plan. The type of works that have been kicked off are design of the additional reverse osmosis trains for the needed expansion of the advanced water purification facility, design and environmental and CEQA legal services regarding the impact for additional wells and pumps needed in the Seaside Basin, and hydrogeologic modeling, as well as project management services to frame up that plan. There will be a lot more to report once the effort gets going, and I'll be reporting that when that occurs. The Seaside Basin Water Master Board did not meet again. Since being appointed on there, I have not actually been to the first meeting, so I have actually no idea what's coming up, but as soon as I do, you'll know. But the next meeting is scheduled for May 1st. The FORA board met, regular meeting was on 4/12, which was last Friday. And on consent was approved the last minutes, the veterans, wastewater and admin committee reports, the public correspondence. Under new business, we heard reports on the building removal process and the ESCA quarterly report, which is the ordinance removal, the transition plan update, which included pending legislation. We awarded $150,000 to staff to conduct a transition plan traffic study or transportation study. The board also unanimously agreed with the City of Marina's general plan amendment and subsequent approval of the Veterans Transition Center housing expansion regarding the consistency with the base reuse plan. An item of good news for Delray Oaks was the Monterey County Superior Court decision in favor of FORA regarding the South Boundary Road project. It was found that the EIR was correctly approved in 2010 if sufficiently addressed the project's impacts, and it sufficiently addressed the project's impacts. Bids for construction will be accepted this fall. The city and FORA will continue its dialogue with the Native Plant Society to ensure their concerns are addressed. On April 10th, I was asked by Bill Monning's office to testify before the Senate Governance Committee in support of moving Senate Bill 189, the extension of the FORA CFD to the Appropriations Committee. The bill was unanimously approved and moved forward. That's it.
Good evening. I've been traveling, so I did not go to the mosquito abatement district meeting nor to AMBAG. I did attend the United Veterans Council and the Retiree Council meetings. Nothing really significant there. And I want to thank Councilmember Gagliotti, Mayor Kerr, and the city manager for attending the annual meeting of the homeowners at the Oaks condominium. Also, a representative from the airport board was there, and would have liked to have a few more owners there, but I think those that were there got a lot of good information. Thank you for coming that evening.
Thank you. Community Human Services did not hold a meeting this month, but I'd like to show you the plaque that they graciously honored Delray Oaks as a participant in all their good work that they do. I attended the Seaside Sanitation Board meeting where we discussed the Marina Coast Water District and the Ord Community Sphere of Influence Amendment and annexation to LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission of Monterey County. The board postponed action and called for a special meeting to be held on April 18 so that we could obtain additional information. I attended that special meeting where the board's recommendation was for the original MCWD's application to LAFCO rather than the amended version that the staff had recommended. As alternate, I attended the MST Board Administrative Performance Committee. A draft of the marketing plan for MST was presented, and the final plan is expected to be presented at the May meeting. It was interesting, one of the items in the proposed plan is a new coloring book. The enthusiasm of some of the attendees, it was rather funny. The administrative performance update was presented by CEO Carl Sidorik, and he reported that there's been a drop in passenger boardings at DLI. The shutdown of the government had an adverse effect on MST finances. Currently, coach drivers are down by 17, and this requires overtime by the current operators. And not only the overtime is invading their private lives and so on, but it's costing the city, the MST money. So please spread the word that MST is hiring. And do you see my shirt? MST is joining with other public transportation systems nationwide to participate in a national Get On Board Day on Thursday, April 25th. And you're all encouraged to ride the MST buses and to support public transportation. There will be a slight meeting at the Salinas Transit Center Salinas Transit Center, Salinas obviously, on April 25th from 8 to 9:30 a.m. And the recruiting staff will be there, hoping to find people who will submit applications for bus operators, and other positions that are currently available for hire at MST. So ride the bus on April 25th and after. The regular board meeting, there were many special recognitions, excuse me, and special presentations were given, which included Employee of the Month, Operator Excellence Award, and years of service as coach operator. One was for 25 years, one was for 30, and there was a lady who had been a coach operator for 40 years. Rather impressive. And we awarded a 5-year contract in the amount of $54,000 a year to Thomas Walters and Associates for federal legislative consulting services. And we authorized MST to award a contract in the amount of $497,253 to William A. Thayer Construction to construct improvements at the Salinas Transit Center. I attended the Delray Oaks Citizens Action Group, where we elected officers for the coming year. David Kimball is president, Julie Webb vice president, Terry Neese treasurer, excuse me, Claudia Campbell secretary, and Barbara Kimball is, I guess you'd call her the social secretary. She sends the thank you notes, etc. And we made our final arrangements for the ice cream social, which will be held on May 19 at Old Town Hall from 2 to 4 p.m. There was a flyer distributed with the Acorn, and if you haven't received it yet, you will by April 27th, I hope. Pony Express is working on it, as Dino said. And I hope you all mark that on your calendar, and hope to see you all. It's really lots of fun. And let me see. That's my report.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, thank you. I have had a busy month as well. I was honored to host the Monterey Regional Housing Coalition, which has representatives from each of the peninsula cities, and we met at Old Town Hall for a retreat one afternoon, and we're talking about how to help address the affordable housing concerns and issues in the region together. So that was exciting. was able to go to the annual Homeowners Association get-together before the Oaks meeting, and that was fun to meet a couple of residents. Like City Manager Pick mentioned, I did meet with the CalAm management team on the status of the supply project. Very interesting. I also received a request to meet with the legal team that may deal with any eminent domain issues if it comes to that, and I respectfully asked if they would come and do a council meeting presentation, and that hasn't been accepted yet. The Monterey County Regional Water Authority, which is made up of the 5 mayors in the CalAm district, voted to decrease its job by 50% next year and pay next year's dues with the reserves because of all the other activity that's going on with the recycled water and the desal plant and things like that. They just felt like we didn't need to be as active as they had been in the past. Attended the TAMSI board meeting. There was a great presentation on safe routes to school, which each city is going to be targeted to have, so all the schools can, all the kids can ride their bikes, and they have safety training or safety classes and all kinds of things. And we will have part of that as part of our 4-tag trail that will go up Carlton and to Delray Wood School. So I'm proud of that. The Finance Committee met. We talked about our current status, which is in a very positive place right now. We reviewed next year's budget to see how we can conservatively allocate any additional funding next year as well. And we're going to meet in a couple of weeks to discuss fiscal year 21. So next month we'll have a 2-year budget to present to council as well as all of you. So that's exciting. It's really good news. All of the assumptions are conservative, anticipating an economic downturn, and to make sure that all of our basic needs are met, and any of the cannabis funding that we do receive is used basically for one-time expenses. So so we're not dependent on that, and we don't suffer unnecessarily. I planned and went to the business meet and greet. It was one of the first times. It was really fun to be able to go around to all of the businesses and introduce myself and invite them to come. And they are overwhelmingly pleased to be in the city. They love our small community. They love the small, adept, and friendly staff that helps them get cut through the bureaucracy in a way that they haven't experienced in other cities. So we should be proud of our team. I just wanted to mention 2 upcoming items. Our Mayor's Advisory Council on Sustainability will be kind of unveiling themselves next Sunday at the Sustainable Seaside Earth Day celebration. So if you can come Sunday from 2 to 4, there will be tables. We've had wonderful support from our business community with goodies that we'll have as part of a raffle. Lots of educational materials will be presented, and come meet the team. Some very impressive community members that are a part of this, that are dedicated to making our city healthier and greener. So please come to that. And I'm going to have to move the What's on Your Mind Mayor's meeting to the 2nd Saturday in May, because I'll be in DC the 1st. So I'll send something out, but I hope to see you there. Thank you. That's all for me. So our next item is the consent agenda. Does anyone on the council wish to pull any item? Anyone in the public wish to pull any item? All right.
Motion to accept consent agenda.
Is there a motion to accept?
I move we accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passed unanimously. Old business, we don't have any, but we have quite a few new business, which I think is why everyone's here. So we're going to start off with receiving a presentation and giving direction for possible future work, possible future uses of Work Memorial Park and Delray Oaks Garden Center. I'm going to turn it over to Tino.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may. I have to recuse myself. I live within 500 feet of the project.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry?
Turkeys, the turkeys are here.
Don't call him that.
Well, all right, Mayor, thank you so much. The agenda item before us tonight is to receive a presentation by Mr. Maury, the proprietor of the Delray Gardens Center, and for council then to ask any questions they have of Mr. Maury and the public as well. What I would ask is we allow Mr. Maury to move through the presentation and complete it, and then take questions. Staff is looking for a general sense from the council as to the way ahead, which we can derive from the nature of the questions asked and the comments made. So with that, I'll present Mr. Maury.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mori. I go by last name Mori, first name Mitsuyu. Thank you very much for City of Seaside. I feel very grateful to have opportunity to own the business, run a business in down the old driving range. Now this is I named vacant lot revitalizing project. As you might all know, that area is vacant. It's been vacant from Garden Center to all the way to Safeway. So this is kind of ambitious project I'm proposing. And there's three things involved. First of all, there's a photo presentation. There will be a recreational trail. It's going to be running through the valley to the Safeway area. That's number one. Number two is lot alignment for our business. I can go over later on why I'm interested in, why I'm proposing that. Number three, it will be biggest area there I just mentioned, building a sustainable park. The majority of the land, vacant land, all the way to Safeway. I'm proposing to build a park. So I'll just go over detail. Here's a recreational trail. Basically, 12 feet of bicycle, they call recreational trail. There's a 4 foot of both sides is a buffer, so total will be 20 feet. And that's the overlook of recreational trail. And this is the, I call plan A, because there's plan B and plan C. This is one of the first plan I came up with. Here's a garden center. Currently, our lot property is up to here. So my suggestion, my proposal is to expand up to here. In any event, here's a trail, recreational trail running through here, going there up on top, upper area. This is the current existing road which I built for my business. This is the existing trail going through there. So that's plan A. So Plan B, this is slightly different. Here's a garden center. The recreational trail would be coming through here, up on top. Here's a tennis court, going through and use the existing business road going back up. So our business road will be pushed up on top. That's Plan B. And the Plan C would be, this is something I came up with, discussing with the representative from ProTag. So this would be, this is again, recreational trail going through all the way to the safe area. And so this is the existing road. So join here, then going back up, this is the recreational trail. Now, my business road will be pushing down near the creek and going through the existing road coming down to this area. So this way, recreational road and our business road won't cross, it's independent. And let's go back to the other, Plan B. Based on Plan B, this is the intersection. So my business road and recreational road have to cross. So this might not be a good idea. So this might be the, this is A, sorry. Plan C might be the best solution. Sorry, oops. Plan C. Anyway, this has to be further discussed. So this is how it was about 4 years ago, abandoned building. And this is the view from the bottom. That's up there, the tennis court right here. That's a tennis court. This is a view from the top. People using dump site, you can see the bunch of soil, asphalt, lumber have been dumped. So this is a view from the existing garden center. So what we're talking about, this is the existing roadway for business. So Plan A will be, the recreational road is going to be on top. So Plan B will be right here. And Plan C will be, business will be from here to coming down this way. And the recreational trail will come in this way and join here and going back. That's a Plan C. So this is today's view from the top tennis court. This is the kind of overview of this is current, this section is the current leased garden center space. So I'm proposing expand a little bit more this way. Here's the problems and ambition of the OA Oaks Gardens. The problem number one, space is limited for bulk material. We don't have enough room for to sell the customer the materials. So I'd like to have at least minimum 5 to 6 bins. And then plant display is also limited. We'd like to have a little bit more. Currently we grow all the plants ourselves at the Salinas. We have 46 acres of growing ground, but we only are able to bring 30% of the plants. So this is kind of frustrating for us. Number 3, sufficient parking space. We just don't have enough sufficient parking our business vehicle either. If we park outside, we get a ticket. So we have to park inside. It's really limited. Our ambition to create exciting space, create wow. That's something I would like to hear from the customer. Actually, we've been hearing, wow, this is the greatest nursery or garden center I've been hearing this, and this is something that I really wanted to expand. So, number one, make our garden center the world class, the best in the world. This is kind of crazy, but this is something that I am telling every employee. We wanted to have them dream goal, and we don't want just to be a mediocre, okay nursery. We want to reach the quality of the service, quality of the plans, and overall, we want to shoot for the best in the world. And something is just a kind of, I've been using this term, the best in the world, best in the world. I've been telling every occasion to my employees. And I was just kind of going in detail, not just the sale of plants and garden material, but able to fulfill our customers' need. And currently we are kind of limited, so I wanted to really expand. And also pots, we don't have enough space for pots and statuary and water features, so forth. And number two, continue to the community by offering the space for cultural activities. That's something that I'd like to offer for the community. And I will go show you the, later on this slide, but I wanted to show you something that we can offer, not just selling plants. We like to offer the space for seminar and small hall for indoor, possibly mini concert, or local musician and students maybe. And this one is something I came up with the idea that one day one customer was saying that she really enjoyed the place she enjoyed to come to our nursery, but she mentioned, I have to buy plants. So I said, no, you don't have to plants, please come by, just enjoy. So I like to offer space so the customer, not just shopping, just to enjoy the atmosphere. So I developed the idea of not just selling the nursery. So this is something earlier in the business, I created, I set the space for table and chair so people can sit, enjoy afternoon, sunny days and so forth. But quickly this was taken over by plants. We just didn't have enough space, so we don't have this anymore. Now, I like to call this currently we call Delray Oaks Gardens, but I like to change before summer to Hana Gardens. So I call Hana Gardens Ambition. The first model store for Hana Gardens franchising network. So I like to eventually expand to Northern California, just like Orchard Supply, but mainly for plants and garden items, not the hardware. But that's my ambition. And I wanted to make the Hana Garden the model store. And also, I wanted to create a cultural center for the community. I like to offer space so people can use. And of course, promoting a sustainable life, which is very important. I live in Seaside, so I get the sustainable Seaside email every time, and very, very strong. Just Mayor was mentioned just earlier, and I really wanted to promote the sustainable. We should have sustainable Delray Oaks. And proposed structure, I wanted to propose greenhouse, not that huge one, but big enough to grow some indoor plants and some liner for the vegetable, like vegetable and seedling for the customer to buy, and also so that's a germination facility for organic home gardening, so people can buy and grow in organically. Because of this properties in a valley situation, wintertime is really, really extremely cold, And it just, especially January, February, it's extremely cold and wind, it's a wind tunnel, wind go right through. So greenhouse is really, it would nice to have to protect plants. And this is a really ambitious proposal. New building, I'd like to propose a new building, 3-story high, steel frame glass building. And which is, I'll show you the picture. More space for the merchandise. And this is something I like to share with you guys. Small community hall for mini concert, exhibition, and seminars and small social event. And top floor I like to provide the employees housing. Because housing is extremely expensive in this area. And rooftop, I like to have possibly coffee shop or something that people can really enjoy up on top. And this is the construction of sustainable park. Okay, this is something that the space between the garden center to Safeway, I call sustainable park. So number one, we don't want to destroy the environment. We like to preserve the environment, which is majority of the marshland. That's number one priority. Number two, usable space for public. What can we use for farm activities? It's been dead for many, many years, and that's just a waste of space. It's possibly play area, tennis. We do have current tennis court, but my proposal is to move on the other end. Number three, outdoor educational area, the seating and gathering area for educational classes and seminars and so forth. Number four, garden exhibit for homeowners and garden lovers. So I like to build garden for the people. Contemporary American gardens, Tuscan European gardens, desert garden, Japanese garden, sustainable native plants nursery, garden. And so here's a sample of my proposal of sample gardens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gardens. I'll show you my kind of idea. So this is the Safeway here, and this is the garden center section there. So this majority is all marshland, and there's a drainage coming through, two sections, drainage coming from the street, and or discharge this area. So winter time is all pretty much wet. So we wanted to preserve this area there. At the same time, we like to build this garden display connected with the boardwalk. So that way we don't destroy the area there. So this is an example of the boardwalk. This one is in Japan. This area is high altitude, but all the snow water is coming down there. So it's a springtime. It's a marshland, and a beautiful white flowers bloom everywhere. This I visited in fall. So fall color is dead grass, but it was just beautiful. This boardwalk is mile and mile, and one of the most beautiful scene meadows. This is an example of my sketch for the Tuscan European garden. So around these are grass marshland here. So here's a boardwalk coming down to the area. It has the water features and the seating area, and going to the other section. These are examples of plants for European gardens. This is the rose garden, or English garden. Bunch of roses here, and here's a boardwalk coming down here, and boardwalk going down there, decomposed granite walkway, and all kinds of, this is roughly 100 variety of the roses there. So here's a sample of the roses, and these are kind of an arch with a rose, climbing rose. This is Japanese garden concept. There's a boardwalk here, and here's seating area bench, and here's a bench. and kind of water feature. This is the water feature, and some rocks and gravel and kind of Japanese type of garden, contemporary Japanese garden. This is a selection of the plants, for example. This is a native plants garden. This is something that I really like to promote. There's a Japanese, native garden at Pacific Grove. Over the past week, there's a native flower show, and they have an exhibition of 700 native plants at the Museum of Natural Science and Natural Science History Museum. Right.
Pacific Grove.
There's a lot of people visiting there, so I'll show you the little picture there. This is the museum in Pacific Grove. These are all native plants. And here's a sign what they are, kind of under shade, rocks, and native plants. And this is all native plants showing the pictures, and unfortunately everything is overgrown. These are native plants. So this is something that I like to do, one of the display, the seating area. So there's a boardwalk coming down here, and seating area. And here's a little seating area, a gathering area, so you can have the little educational seminar and so forth, and going down to boardwalk. So ground cover type of native plants. These are native trees. That'll create a shade, and the shrubs, and ground cover and so forth. That's kind of a rough idea. So this is xeriscape, my sketch of the using stepping stone, gravel, and succulent type of plants, rocks, possibly water feature. These are the kind of example of the xeriscape. Xeriscape means that almost non-watering, non-irrigated landscaping. So these are an example of plant choice for xeriscape plants. Some succulent plants, some bloom nicely, give you a different texture and look of the foliage, and it gives a very, very interesting landscaping as well. So here's lastly the building I'm proposing. Here's a tennis court here in upper level, and so the lower level we have sales office. I like to build this bamboo, reach up to 30 feet, timber bamboo. So this will be all glass structure, steel construction, and grass. And staircase going up to the top. There's people can enjoy view and gathering area here top. The second floor, I like to propose meetings place, a craft, seminar, little concert. This is 50 feet by 100, so pretty good size of building. So Hana Garden, how can we make it world-class garden center? I ask myself, how can you call it world-class? So number one, variety of plants we offer from outdoor to indoor and lots of variety. Number two, supply our customer with almost everything they need for all type of gardens. So I like to make it one-shop store. So in order to complete, we like to stock everything that you need. Number three, the first-class service. This is very, very important. Continuously offering, educating my employees how to serve, how we can develop a knowledge and customer care. With the heart, that's very, very important. So I'm always stressing that. Number four, sample display garden attached to the garden. That's something very, very unique. No other garden center in the world has display gardens that people just can enjoy, sit down there, enjoy, and they get ideas. Hey, this plant is great. Where can I find it? Okay, it has a name, tag, so come to Manae Garden Center, we can show them how to plant. And number five, the philosophy and business policies spread beyond the running business. This is something that business is making big money. That's business, that's how businesses stay in business. But That is not the ultimate goal. Ultimate goal is just gotta give back to the community, society. So I'm really wanted to share that with my employee as well. So I call Hana Garden seek to and contribute happiness in the community. If we could do making money and make the people happy, that's the ideal business. So now, how is it possible to make this material, world-class garden center? How you going to do that? So number one, have to have a strong leadership and a vision and a community assistance. I'm sure a lot of people, sustainable and garden people will be able to help us, advice and so forth. But this is me. I would like to really take leadership because we're not a corporation like a big bug store. I'm the decision maker. I'm the one leading my employee. I'm the one taking full responsibility, any action. So in that sense, we have strong leadership. It's not corporate decision. And this will be a long-range plan. It's not like a next year. We need to coordinate with the FOTAG and so forth. My guess is probably 3 to 7 years to materialize, possibly maybe 10 years. Now, Hana Garden's background and resource, I can do this because that's me, more as a qualification as a business planner. I kind of, my advertisement. As a business, I started my own business to multi-million business in gardening business. So I own a wholesale nursery to retail nursery, at the same time landscape company. And so my company is a vertical integrated business. So from design to installation and growing plants, we all have, my company can supply that. So for materializing the gardens, we can provide from farm. We can bring plants, and let's see. And I myself is actually qualified to materialize this world-class garden center. I have a contractor license, college degree, blah, blah, blah. So my biggest resource is 46 acres of growing nursery I have. We are growing from little plants right now to huge 16-inch box we've been providing to the customers. And I've been in business since 1980, technically since 1985. Reality is, since I finished my graduate classes, I graduated 1981. I'm an old man. So 85, I started with a license. So roughly about 30, almost 40 years. And I have built numerous gardens in the community and received many awards in garden competitions, including the San Francisco Garden Shows. And some of the gardens I built was featured in Sunset Magazine and so forth. This is my advertisement, how great I am. Because nobody say that. There's a dream. Red Oaks, make the city very unique and exciting with a vision for the future. Wow. Number 2, be the leader in sustainability with promoting with the green plants, possibly tied with sustainable seaside group. That would be great. Number 3, ideal business. I like to build an ideal business model that community and the business can grow hand in hand. That's the ideal situation. We feed each other. So let's create excitement for the next generation. Thank you.
Any council comments, questions?
Yes, I have some.
Please.
In order to do this, I believe it would require a secret process. Thank you. In order to accomplish this, I believe it would require a secret process, and to the full extent, and would need a negative declaration, an environmental impact, and perhaps a traffic study. And all of these are normally paid by the developer, not by the city of Delray Oaks. We do have the wetland areas, as Maury presented. I do have a question, Maury, about the tennis courts.
Yes.
Are you planning to use that space where the tennis courts are?
That's my proposal, correct.
And so what would happen to our tennis players?
So my proposal is to go back, oops. Did I turn it off?
It's on.
Oh. Okay. So this is the tennis court right now. So my proposal is move to here, this area.
Okay, but that's all wetlands. It's,
That have to be
how
discussed.
can you build something permanent on a wetland area?
This is not wetland. This is currently, there's a flat area here. Wetland will be coming down here.
It was my understanding everything in addition to where you are now, all of that toward Safeway is wetlands.
Well, right now, currently, this area is all dry, right here. So this section might be in part of wetland. That's correct. So let me show you, okay. So, other possibility is to move this one to the other side of the tennis court, the other section of the park. That's, city manager was kind of suggesting something as a possibility.
Right, the tennis courts potentially could move to our park. So if council's will is to further explore this, we'll certainly look at locations for the tennis courts.
Would that be at your cost, the building of the new tennis court?
Well, we're going to have to talk about it. Let me show you the very last. Yeah. Here's a very rough figure. Roadway, 120,000. This is just a ballpark, really ballpark. My building cost about 3 million. Facility with beans, that's about 100,000. I spent close to 150,000 to clean up the area and build current garden center. So that's a number came from. UGD, so forth. Here's a garden park. There's a boardwalk and so forth. Display garden, roughly 150,000. Boardwalk is 50,000. Relocation tennis court, probably 50,000. ED is 20,000. So that's just my intelligent guess.
Okay. And Rosita is a neighborhood street, and Delray Oaks Garden Center is turning it into a commercial street. The trucks, the vehicles with trailers, they're increasing. Now, all this with an expansion is going to even increase the use of Rosita Road as it stands. And the garden center products are spilled on the roadway by trailers and all. And there's the noise factor, the rattling of the trailers, difficulty of residents backing out of their driveways. That's as it currently exists. Excuse me, please. So I'm proposing that all trucks and also all vehicles towing trailers coming to your facility to pick up product enter behind Safeway
Correct.
rather than down Rosita Road.
Yes. Currently, most truck, especially semi, using actually this road. Let me show you the better one.
Those are the very large trucks that are delivering product.
Right here.
And
Coming down here.
I'm referring to landscapers who are purchasing product from you for their customers. With the pickup trucks with their trailers and all. And that's what I'm proposing should come back behind Safeway rather than
Right.
make
So-
Rosita a commercial road.
Yes, that's something we can work. back in here, if you could put a permanent sign and trucks, small trucks, commercial vehicle this way, that way we can guide this section there, and this can be just a small little vehicle. We can put a sign right here saying, no commercial vehicle allowed, something like that.
Okay, and prior to your occupying that space, we had a proposal, and they were going to have large, like tree trimming equipment, cherry pickers and so on. So I'm suggesting that we don't want any tree trimming equipment or large vehicles either for the use, for your use, or for lease or rent or sale to be parked at your facility.
No, that's not happening. The tree trimming truck is parked
I'm
right
talking
here.
about future. I know it's not happening now, but I'm talking in the future, or any semi-trucks and so on.
Well, I'm aware of the problem, so that's why we build this road, and we are encouraging the customer to use this road.
Okay. Well, I think it should be more than an encouragement. It should be mandatory. And, let's see, I'd like to see the building to be a two-story building only, so that the view coming down on Canyon Del Rey is not looking like a business center entering, because that's one of the primary entrances to our city. And I would like to keep it a lower profile, your building, so that it has more of the look of nature, like the garden center does have, and the wetland areas. It's very natural. I don't like the idea of having a building protruding up and viewing. So that's why I'm suggesting a two-story building.
Well, business building, we don't want to hide, we want to advertise, we want people encouraged to come here. So, especially places vary right here. So even if you're three-story, actually, the reality is two-story, because first story is actually below the grade.
Maury, may I? Thank you. So I think for the purposes of tonight, all of the comments and all the input is good. Don't feel like you have to answer every question tonight, because we're very early in the process. It was a great presentation.
Concept.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so I think if we can just take all the input, it'll go through a significant, as you mentioned, CEQA process, planning process, planning commission review, and building. So I appreciate everything you're saying.
Okay, I have one more comment. Currently, you have a limitation as to the number of Sundays that you can be open, and I would like to see that continued also. Thank you.
I want to say thank you so much for this. I personally find it very exciting. I like the idea of using that space in a way that honors the nature as well as community uses. And I know that it's a long process, and there's lots of factors to take into account. But I know a lot of people that would be very excited about this to come and help. I'm a master gardener, and we have another piece of property with a native plant society. I could see there be all kinds of potential partnerships that would make it even that much more vibrant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any public comment?
Dennis Allian, Delray Oaks. Thank you very much for that presentation. The thing I would encourage, of course, we're going to have to go through this long process. We all know that. And the really important thing is to keep a very open mind about how to work with somebody like this who brings a wealth of ideas to us, and not just simply say, oh, I don't like a three-story building, whatever. That tells me you've predetermined something, which is entirely the wrong thing to do. You've got to look at the data, work with the person, see what the options are, see how it benefits our city, and figure out how to mitigate these things that may be objectionable. So it's not a matter of saying, I don't like this, I don't want that. No, let's talk about it and figure out how to mitigate. So thank you very much for the presentation, and I hope it moves forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Is this the right time to say about Monterey Bay Community Power?
No.
No, oh, okay. Darn. But I do want to thank Mr. Maury.
I'll let you know, Katie.
Okay. I do want to thank you, Mr. Maury, because that is so inspiring and so exciting. So I wanted to say that anyway, so.
Thank you.
Alexis Bunton, Portola Drive. I just want to thank you, Mr. Maury, for taking the initiative to to draw up some plans and do a lot of careful thinking. I love your business. I love your employees. You do a great business. I was a little concerned when you came in, but then I've been giving you all my garden business, and I really, really love your vision. First of all, I want to say that, and just taking the initiative on this is a huge deal. That said, I want to offer some of my opinions about some of the plans you had. It seems to me that the road that the work vehicle should come down should be the closest to Canyon Del Rey, because if it cuts through the middle of the wetlands, it's going to upset wildlife, and it's going to make a barrier to wildlife corridors. One of the things that I like the best about driving up Rosita early in the mornings all the time is that I often see California quail, turkeys, lots of wildlife, and this space is an unexamined opportunity to bring in a lot of wildlife, a lot of bees. I've been reading a lot about native plants attracting bees and wildlife lately, and to me, and I also love your idea for a community center and garden showcases and the tennis court. I believe there's only 2 teenagers who skate in this city right now, so I don't know about that, but that would require a survey and more research. The display gardens, love the idea, love it. I recently went to Point Defiance and some other display gardens recently that were amazing. I enjoy them, but my sense of kind of ethics to the community makes me think that I would rather see that wetland space being used as just a native plant garden in and of itself. I would not like to see all the heavy industrial vehicles coming through the back road. I'd like to see them go down Rosita, because if we create a native plant garden with a boardwalk that looks like the picture you had in Japan, like Japanese gardens, oftentimes they honor the Japanese temperate climate and the plants that are there. So I'd rather see something more cohesive without lots of heavy trucks going down that actually encourages deer, birds, wildlife. That's actually a place that could really be a stunning showcase for the entire peninsula. So I really, really love your ideas, love the fact that you took charge. It's really cool to see this social entrepreneurship happen, and we could really be a leader in that. But just some suggestions and ideas. We need to think about it much further, and thank you for some of your comments, except for the ones about heavy vehicles going through it.
Okay. So the next item is receive a presentation and give direction on the housing element. Yes, if she could. Could somebody but Councilmember Gagliardi, thank you. That's okay. So we're going to receive a presentation and give direction on the housing element update, which was discussed briefly earlier, the city's forward property development and public infrastructure.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council, members of the public. The presentation tonight, the purpose of the presentation tonight is to weave together several topics. The first is the housing element. We've talked about that already, that it's a critical thing, and on consent tonight, Council approved the scope of work and the funding to update our housing element before the end of the year, which is super exciting. How that housing element affects and integrates with the development of our forward property, and then how the public infrastructure, which includes, in this case, utilities, South Boundary Road, and the Fort Ord Recreational Trail and Greenway, weave into the private development and our housing element. So a lot of complex subjects that I plan to cover at a very high level, wave top level, and then I'm happy to take questions. So this is our agenda. The housing element 1990, the housing element was first drafted. It was formally adopted in 92, integrated into our general plan in 95. General plan was approved in 97. In effect, 22 years ago. Our housing element is 22 years old. And if you go back to when it was drafted, you could say it's older than that. 2003, an early version of an update was prepared and circulated. HCD stands for Housing and Community Development Department at the state level, so it's basically the state's planning department and land use department. HCD identified additional policies and programs that were needed, and they were included into the draft plan. In 2006, HCD reviewed and approved the revised draft of the housing element and sent it to the council for approval and action. That draft housing element was never adopted. And the reasons for it not being adopted have to do with, as I understand it, the nature of the development that was being considered and contemplated at that time on the former Fort Ord property and how it affected the housing element. And so the upshot is that work was never adopted by the city. So where are we now? We are currently, as I said, the City Council just approved the scope and funding for an update. Denise Duffy and Associates will lead that work, and if things work out the way we hope, by the end of the calendar year, we'll have an adopted housing element. The Fort Ord property. In 2005, the city received approximately 342 acres of former Fort Ord property with water allocation for development. The State Department of Toxicology and Substance Control cleared approximately 100 acres of that 342 for residential use. This is important because given the toxins, the unexploded munitions, and other unsafe elements throughout the Fort Ord properties, having DTSC, which is the acronym for Department of Toxicology and Substance Control, having DTSC approval to build residential on 100 acres essentially means that DTSC found those 100 acres safe enough for enduring residential use. Children, families, they cleared it to a significant level. There is not a lot of Fort Ord property cleared to that level. In 2007, the city sought to develop the property. The recession hit us, and the developer went bankrupt, ultimately ended up suing the city, and that the city carries a fairly significant liability of about $1.2 million as a result of that outcome. In 2014, the city sold 73 acres, and I have a map on this slide that is not great, but it's the best we have, and I'll orient you to it, and I'll be coming back and forth to this map. This is General Jim Moore Boulevard. This is South Boundary Road. And this is the boundary of our Fort Ord land. It actually comes down here and right there, right? The city sold in 2014 Parcel A, Parcel D, and what is called the Caltrans right-of-way to Monterey Peninsula Partners for development, and entered into an option agreement for them to, that sale was for $3 million, and entered into an option agreement to sell parcels B and C, which are these two large parcels, for $17 million. In 2016, Monterey Peninsula Partners entitled the Monument RV Park by initiative measure on Parcel D and the Caltrans right-of-way. So, good heavens. The Parcel D and the Caltrans right-of-way are where MPP plans to build a high-end RV resort. And again, that was entitled in terms of the environmental review through the initiative process, which I understand was extraordinarily unpopular with many of our residents. We will not be doing that again. Currently, the option expires in July of 2019. The city and Monterey Peninsula Partners are discussing possible option extensions in exchange for a funded public outreach and in full environmental review process. And just to touch on that a little bit, the Several council members, the mayor, several council members, and myself have met with this, with Monterey Peninsula Partners. Our economic development consultant, David Zender, is here with us tonight, and Denise Duffy, our planning consultant, have also met with them. What is in consideration at just the highest level is Monterey Peninsula Partners has entered into a joint venture with a much more experienced development team. Monterey Peninsula Partners is a father-son team with very little development experience. They're the ones that acquired the land for the RV resort. They are inexperienced in development. So they've entered into a partnership with a team that has much more extensive knowledge of California development and a track record of accomplished development behind them. It's with this joint venture that the city has been discussing the potential extension of a option agreement with significant teeth in it from the city's perspective to drive private money to fund public outreach, to fund the specific plan development, and to fund a full environmental impact report. Public infrastructure. South Boundary Road and the General Jim Moore and South Boundary Road intersections are a significant capital improvement project that FORA is moving forward. As Councilmember Gagliotti mentioned earlier, that project has cleared what by any measure was a frivolous lawsuit that tied us up for about a year, and it is moving forward towards 100% design now, with the goal of starting construction early in 2020. It's a $7 million capital improvement project that will take longer than FORA has to complete. So it'll transition to us as a partially completed road, which has implications for the city and agreements we need to enter into with FORA. Sewer, water, electricity, and gas, each has obviously PG&E is electricity and gas, but there's going to be unique potential with Monterey Bay Community Power for power generation, potentially. And Seaside County Sanitation District is our sanitary sewer provider, and Marina Coast Water District, on the former Fort Ord, is the water purveyor. We're in discussions with all of them to discuss the installation of these utilities in such a way that is complementary with South Boundary redesign and reconstruction, so that we don't build a beautiful road and then cut right through it to dig a sewer line in. It sounds intuitively obvious, but the coordination is actually fairly challenging given everyone's authorities and funding schedules and so on. FORTAG is the acronym for Fort Ord Recreational Trail and Greenway. It's a wonderful project that the voters approved as part of Measure X. The first phase, Fremont to Frog Pond, is fully funded now with a TAMC grant that augments Measure X funds. It's going through a public outreach process in CEQA, an environmental review. The possibility exists for us to either go out for additional grant funding or to impose development fees to help us fund the remainder of the trail that would wind across General Jim Moore from the Frog Pond through the Monterey Peninsula Regional Parks District parcel south of South Boundary Road. Let me go back to this map. So to fund the portion of the trail that would basically wind through here, through our property, and then up into Seaside, which is similarly exciting. So how do these projects interrelate? So here is across the top is time, across the left is the housing element, Fort Ord property development, and public infrastructure. So you can see here in July, and I'll take each line through, it's 2 slides worth on each one. The housing element was just approved for update. Denise plans a public workshop in early summer, probably June, where we'll take public comment on zoning and housing and densities. She will guide us through an environmental review process, an initial study to determine what level of environmental impact there is with regards to the housing element. And then by the end of this calendar year, by December 2019, our goal is to have an adopted housing element. After that, we can compete for grants to fund a general plan update. The state has made it clear, the legislature and the governor, housing crisis. The housing crisis in California is a top priority. They've deployed an array of carrots and sticks. The carrots involve grant funding that we can compete for if our housing element is compliant. The sticks involve all sorts of potential loss of funding if we don't. So we're going to comply. And then we're going to go out and compete for grant funding. And that's it across the housing element line. Once it's adopted, it will inform everything we do with regard to housing in the city, but in particular, it will inform what we're doing with this large development on the former Fort Ord, with regard to zoning, with regard to densities, and so on, affordable housing, workforce housing, and the like. So going to the second line, Fort Ord property, we're in the process of renegotiating this option agreement. The potential exists for us to bring a renegotiated option agreement to the council for consideration in closed session in May. If that were to happen, the rest of these are hypothetical if that were to happen. If that were to happen, then it would trigger a series of public workshops through the remainder of 2019. Again, these would be developer-funded workshops that seek to tease out the community's vision for what should happen on the former Fort Ord. Should it be housing? What types of housing? Should there be retail? What types of retail? Should there be light industrial space? If so, what? Should we move, as we've discussed, the self-storage units and some of the businesses located in our current light industrial space up onto the former Fort Ord and repurpose for potential town center purposes or otherwise our current light industrial space? All of these kinds of questions will be asked during public workshops. A full EIR process, environmental impact review and report, will be conducted, and the development of a specific plan which would outline and take that public input and outline the project, what would become the project for our Fort Ord property, would then start to come into focus. As we go forward in time into July 2021 and later into calendar year 2021, public workshops would continue. At some point, the developer would have funded, and we will have completed, an environmental impact report and a specific plan that would come to this council for review and approval. So specific plan adoption and an EIR acceptance. There will be a possible, at some point into the future, depending on how this option is renegotiated, there will be a possible sale of the land then to this developer, who would, based on the specific plan and based on the project, then begin pulling permits and doing and building the project. So let me go back to the public infrastructure. South Boundary Road, as I mentioned before, will likely start construction in early 2020. With any luck, we'll have sewer lines being designed and constructed with, in conjunction by Eastside County Sanitation District. As you see here with the FORA ending, FORA ends and then the project gets completed. So there will be some agreement entered into here whereby either a successor agency of FORA or the city will assume responsibility for the project and take it through to completion. So at some point in the future, we'll install power and gas infrastructure, and at some point in the future, we'll obtain grant funding to complete FORTAG, which will be an integral part of the specific plan developed for the community on the former Fort Ord. The current legislative language working its way through Sacramento that Councilmember Gangliotti referred to earlier suggests a 2-year extension of a successor agency. So even if that legislation is approved, that successor agency will end in July of 2022. And so by July 22, if not sooner, the city will be fully in the driver's seat with all of the benefits and challenges that poses to a small city like us of our Fort Ord property and its development. So what does the next 5 years hold? The housing will remain a state priority. Grants and incentives to increase housing stock are on the table and will likely continue with this legislature and governor's priorities. There will be penalties for noncompliance. The city's housing element will inform development planning going forward. There will be an EIR and a specific plan that are developer-funded, informed by the public and the housing element, and the Habitat Conservation Plan, which is a document currently still in progress that FORA staff are trying to bring to completion before they sunset, that would govern the mechanisms by which permits are issued for certain endangered species. And then, as I said, FORA will sunset in 2020. And we will have control of the construction project unless it stays with the successor agency. And then the Fortag Trail Network, TAMC, will complete the project level EIR. The first phase will be built out in the next 3 to 4 years, and then the Fort Ord portion will be completed as soon as grant funding is, or other funding from developers potentially is found, and to match Measure X funds. So the city council options, some of the city council options, we could, obviously there is the option to do nothing. And because of the finances of the city, that has been an option here for quite some time. The city has the option to update the general plan, starting with the housing element, which the council has made a priority at the strategic planning retreat and funded tonight as far as the housing element is concerned. We'll need to seek funding for a general plan update, either through state grants or developer funding. The council can develop city-owned properties sustainably within public input. That is a direct lift from their current goal, the council's current goal. What that means to staff is considering renegotiating the option agreement and bringing it to council, and having in that agreement assurances of public outreach and environmental review and funding tied to the development team. Consider adoption of a specific plan following significant public input at some point in the process, and then consider certifying an EIR should it come before you following approval of a option agreement. Building public infrastructure, we should consider an agreement with FORA to assume responsibility of the South Boundary Road project unless some successor agency retains sufficient capability and prerogative to oversee that project to completion. And consider applying for a power generation project with Monterey Bay Community Power to support our development, which is a really, really exciting potential. In summary, the state has made solving the housing crisis a top priority. The city council has directed staff very clearly to move forward to comply. The city has land to help address this crisis while stabilizing the city's financial position for the long term. Updating the housing element general plan and developing city-owned properties and constructing public infrastructure clearly are interrelated, and I just saw it tonight to give a very introductory presentation on how they are. And together, frankly, they provide the means to achieve a vibrant long-term vision for the city of Delray Oaks for current and future generations. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions the council might have or the public.
I just think it was a great presentation. Thank you.
It was an excellent presentation. I do have a question on the RENA number.
Right.
Is that something that we have an old RENA number and we are going to obtain a new?
Yeah, great question. So RENA is Regional Housing Needs Assessment number. There are numbers of affordable housing units by type, by income level that our regional I don't know what AMBAG is, so I'm trying to describe it. It's a regional group of governments, and ours is called AMBAG, Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments. They set our RENA numbers, and our RENA numbers are currently exist. They were submitted in the this annual progress review that Denise submitted. They'll be updated by AMBAG in the coming, I think, 18 to 24 months, and ultimately AMBAG will produce new RENA numbers, which we will need to integrate into our housing element.
And then I have a question kind of on that process. We'll get a RENA number based on our residential housing now, but not necessarily, that RENA number will not be informed by anything that's being proposed or could possibly happen out at Fort Ord. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it is. I don't know if the housing RENA numbers are based on our current housing or our population, but certainly they'll, whatever impact there is, we'll have to work through.
Yeah.
And beyond the RENA numbers, there's a separate matter, I know we've discussed it, of what, beyond your affordable housing, what kind of workforce housing you might want to contemplate for your community. And so that'll be part of our dialogue as well.
Exact. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Concerning the RENA numbers, that, I believe, is actually not going to be done until 2022. They just started recalculating them. It's a 4-year process. And RENA is a regional need, and they not only take into consideration your current housing inventory, but they also take into consideration what resources you have. I don't know if anybody saw the papers recently, but RENA was complaining that they had a lot more RENA numbers than the other cities on the peninsula. Well, they had the water allocation and they had the land. So they ended up in the last RENA round of getting significantly more housing needs identified to be put into their community than the others on the peninsula. Because it's not merely your population and your current inventory, but also what resources you have that they do take into consideration.
Right. And the only thing I'd add to that is as we discuss with our development team the potential of a renegotiated option agreement, we're discussing affordable housing. We've discussed CHISPA as a organization, one of several in the state that are really good at coming in and building affordable housing, and being a component of any project going forward. So that is in the narrative and in the dialogue with the development team.
I just want to say, the last time I saw something, the RENA numbers were in like the 27 range?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay. So it's not huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions before I
have a question.
Yeah, public comment, come on up.
I just have a question.
Frederica, will you come up?
The question that I had was, the affordable housing or the lower income housing, it does not necessarily go on South Boundary Road, correct? It just has to be allocated somewhere in the city of Delray Oaks. So regardless of who develops South Boundary Road, they just are responsible for having a number of houses designated as the low income or the RENA number somewhere in the city of Delray Oaks, which they could identify any of our homes as low-income housing, right? I mean, if that's plausible, and not build anything new, but establish already something that's already in existing as low-income, and still have their higher income homes or their development on South Boundary Road. Is that right?
So it's a great question, though. It's a great question. First of all, so our RENA numbers are within the city limits. So the affordable housing has to be within the city limits of Delray Oaks. I don't know, and it's a good question I can ask our planning staff, what the mechanism would be to designate an existing R1 unit as affordable and somehow deed restricted or otherwise affordable. It doesn't, it's something I've never experienced, so I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I've never seen it done. And we can ask our planning staff. where could affordable housing be built? It could be built on the Fort Ord property. It could be built on the 17-acre parcel. It could be, as Mr. Maury, still here, thank you, Maury, suggested, they could be a component of his building down on Work Memorial Park in that area. And you could choose to rezone, I suppose, your light industrial area and redevelop it with affordable housing units on second and third floors above retail. So there are a lot of options. I'd say what I would not put a lot of stock in, I think, if I understood your concern, is with us somehow going through a process whereby your existing homes are redesignated as affordable and new construction is built out there for high-end homes. That is not a scenario I see happening. But I'm going to ask the question if it's even possible to redesignate an R1 unit that's not affordable as affordable. I'll ask. Yep.
Any other public comments? Great. Well, I just want to say thank you to City Manager Pick. For me, the big part of this is the public engagement. And, it's not too early to start thinking about what you would envision being out there. And please plan on coming to the outreach events and share that, because now's the time. Okay, and thank you. We're running a little late, but we have a couple more important things. The next the next item is to approve joining Monterey Bay Community Power.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. The issue before council is to introduce ordinance 299 entitled An Ordinance of the City of Delray Oaks, authorizing the implementation of a community choice aggregation program by participating in Monterey Bay Community Power Authority's Community Choice Aggregation Program, and adopt a resolution as such. A little bit of context from the staff report lays this out, but what I'd like to highlight for the public and for council is my first city council meeting was the second reading of the ordinance to join Monterey Bay Community Power. I will never forget it. And the council at that time decided not to join Monterey Bay Community Power. They expressed concerns about liability allocation, and as we studied the JPA language and we looked at the liability questions, we were unable to satisfactorily answer those questions to the extent where we could recommend joining. We did, however, go through a very extensive process of looking into and comparing Monterey Bay Community Power, King City Community Power, a small, much smaller, very small CCA in South County, with PG&E's Solar Choice Program. We had a fairly extensive public workshop on a very complex topic, energy markets, and there was great public feedback and input. As we proceeded through that time, the CPUC made a decision to raise the charges PG&E could charge CCAs for using their infrastructure. As we waited to see what that charge was and how it would affect the viability of CCAs, what we learned was it essentially made King City not viable for us to join. It had an impact on Monterey Bay Community Power, but not an impact that caused Monterey Bay Community Power to become insolvent or unable to provide power to its customers. And then more recently, we have re-engaged with Monterey Bay Community Power, Mayor Kerr, Councilmember Gangliotti, Councilmember Getzel, in separate meetings with me, have met with Tom Habashi and the team at Monterey Bay Community Power and asked some really tough questions about the apportionment of liability, about what happens if this whole thing just goes sideways. And as much as we don't want it to and hope it doesn't, we needed to understand that. And I just want to call out, Mayor Kerr's staunch advocacy on the one hand, and Councilmember Gagliotti's professional background with renewable energy, both provided some really good salient questions as we discussed the matter with Tom. What we learned ultimately was that Monterey Bay Community Power's cash position is solid and getting better. They have $53 million in the bank as of January, probably significantly more by now. They're headed to over $100 million of assets in the bank. They have paid off all their initial credit that they took out to build operational capacity and take on initial power purchase agreements. And they are expanding. They're expanding outside of Monterey County and the Tri-County area that they're currently in. And most importantly, I think from the perspective of addressing this liability question, the liability that accrues to the city of Delray Oaks is in the event of the departure of the city of Delray Oaks from Monterey Bay Community Power or the dissolution of Monterey Bay Community Power in some catastrophic fashion. The liability that accrues to the city of Delray Oaks is that for the power purchase agreements that were purchased to serve our customers in the city of Delray Oaks, and only if the power purchase agreements are sold for less than they were purchased. So if there's a delta between what they were bought for and what they're sold for, that's a liability. The liability for our customers would accrue to the city of Delray Oaks, and that essentially is a per capita liability, which was our concern all along. And there's another point I want to make, and I'm losing it. I can't remember. So, based on that analysis by the staff and the questions by the council, so they also offer some outstanding programs to communities, not only in terms of renewable energy and renewable power for your homes and our businesses, but also with regard to the potential for power generation for unserved areas. This is generally meant, I think, to service sort of unincorporated Monterey County, sort of less developed areas where they can deploy power generation to serve those communities faster and potentially cheaper than PG&E might. But that possibility also exists for our Fort Ord parcel. And we've had some initial discussions that are pretty exciting, and we'll have to see how those develop over time. But due to all of that analysis, it's staff's strong recommendation at this point, given solid reasons for waiting as council did, to now move forward and approve joining Monterey Bay Community Power. It gives our residents and businesses choice at a competitive rate with minimal risk to the city. So, Mayor, that concludes my presentation.
Any comments? Any council comments?
Sure. I want to comment. I support the adoption of Ordinance 299. I think it's the right time for Delray Oaks to join Monterey Bay Community Power. I appreciate the previous council's diligence and concern when this opportunity first was introduced to them. I want to say to Tom Abashi's credit, he collateralized an organization with $53 million worth of cash, which I find completely amazing because it just locks up so much capital. Unfortunately for Tom, but good for power customers, power contracts are AAA rated. They must be fully backed agreements with hefty consequences for default. And knowing sellers on the other side of Monterey Bay Community or Monterey Bay Community Power contracts, when they said they were confident with Monterey Bay Community's ability to perform, that was good for me. Pat, I want you to know that I feel your initial concerns have been addressed. I think the city would be in a secured position as a member of Monterey Bay Community Power. Mayor, in no small part, you deserve recognition for your persistence in making this opportunity a reality for the community, and I look forward to voting for the adoption of Ordinance 299.
Yes, I was not in support of it previously, as you all know, and it was simply because of the possibility of putting the city in such a precarious position financially and the potential for bankruptcy. And now, all the issues that I was opposed to at that time have been resolved, so I think now is the time to join. And thank you all for all your hard work in mitigating all the problems, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
I wasn't a member of the council when it originally voted not to join Monterey Bay Community Power. I did follow it, and I was concerned as a citizen, the potential, what was our, you know, what was going to be our financial liability versus the size of our city, the size of the customers, what was our voice on the board. And I really like the idea of Monterey Bay Community Power, but I felt that at that time, the physical well-being of the city needed to be taken into consideration, because physical well-being of the city is the fiscal well-being of all of us. So at the time, I was supportive of the decision the council made. Now, time has passed and they have become a proven entity. We have clarified what our responsibilities and obligations could potentially be. Also, I really like the idea that they could potentially be the source of our electrical infrastructure as we continue with developing of the Fort Ord property. So I definitely support this at this time.
Well, I have had faith since the beginning, and it has driven me to where I am today. I am looking forward, and hopefully that our citizens have a choice between an investor-owned utility and a local nonprofit. Mr. Avashi is an amazingly adept and experienced professional who is creating all kinds of innovative ways to approach alternative energy for the ratepayers. And I am thrilled that we're discussing this and that it might be a possibility not really soon. I don't know if everyone understands the timing. If we have a first vote this evening, and then we'll have a second reading and a second vote next month. And if both of those are approved by the council, then we can join. But what that means is we have to do quite a bit of paperwork by the end of December. And then because of legislation that has happened since Monterey Bay Community Power first got up and running, we then have to wait one additional calendar year before we can fully get electricity from MVCP. So if all goes well up here, we would be on board, I'm guessing, January 2021. So but we're that much closer. So I just want to thank everyone for considering it and all of you for being here. And I just want to open it up for public comment. No, it's my turn.
Yay, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time and your consideration. We're very excited that Delray Oaks will be joining, hopefully, Monterey Bay Community Power. So thank you very much.
Alexis Bunton, Portola Drive. I just want to thank the city manager, the council, and the mayor for bringing this back on the table at this time after looking at a lot of different considerations. And I want to bring up the economic argument for this in case it hasn't been clear. Dino, you pointed out that we can get a solar array that is critical to some of the other things that we want to get done in this city. But from a household by household perspective, I have a lot of friends in this city of different ages, and I know I was talking to a lot of folks in January and February, and it was a really cold winter, but people were saying, why was my bill so high? Why, I said it. Some of the people I was talking to were on fixed incomes. They were a little older. And we just chalked it up to it being cold. But then I remembered when I used to consult for PG&E, when they had the plan to go from a 4-tiered rate system to a 2-tiered rate system from 2015 to 2019, ending just before our bills went way up. In which case, if you hit the second tier, which is also timed by the time of day that you use electricity between dinner time and bedtime, when everybody's eating, cooking, and watching TV, your bills were going to go up. And that's exactly what we experienced. And when it was abstract, it was very difficult. But when a lot of us had $50, $60, $70 bill increases, it was extremely difficult. Now today, if you guys looked at the news, PG&E has proposed to raise all of our electric bills by 7.7% because of the wildfires and the infrastructure they have to put in to reinstate the grid in the Central Valley. So on top of that huge increase we had by going from 4-tiered rates to 2, we're now going to add on top of that 7.7%. So just from our friends and neighbors and our monthly budgets perspective, I can't afford all those extra bills, and I'm an active working person who can make more money if and when I need to. But I know there's a lot of people in this community who can't. So from an economic perspective, it makes good sense to me.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Sakaros of the Oaks. I just wanted to also take a moment to acknowledge and really celebrate this council for truly hearing our community in regards to this particular endeavor. This is a fabulous example of democracy in action, and it makes me very proud to live in Delray Oaks. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of our community, thank you so much.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2019-9.
There's an ordinance in it.
Right.
I'm sorry?
It's ordinance 299.
Oh, the ordinance and the resolution,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So what would you like to do? Adopt the ordinance?
And the resolution.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the ordinance and the resolution 2019-9. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Makes me very happy. Item D, approve a letter to Senator Monning regarding FORA legislation.
Thank you, Mayor. The issue before you tonight is to approve a letter to Senator Monning regarding the extension of FORA legislation for the purposes of the extension of its Community Facilities District and a potential successor agency. What I'd like to briefly run through is for the public and the council's benefit, is that there are two paths working forward right now for the transition of FORA. One is through the legislature in Sacramento that is discussing what, if any, extension of the FORA Legislative Act should take place. There is a Senate bill, two Senate bills actually, that have been introduced by Senator Monning. One is Senate Bill 189, and the other is Senate Bill 255. 533, thank you. Senate Bill 189 is the legislation that the city letter writes in support of. It is the draft legislation that essentially would see the Community Facilities District, which is the financing mechanism for FORA, extended for 2 years, and would allow that financing to be allocated by a successor agency for certain purposes. There are very differing opinions about FORA amongst the various land use jurisdictions. Those opinions generally revolve around how much development they've done so far. So Marina is pretty far along with its development because frankly it suffered the most when Fort Ord closed. And so it has received a significant amount of financing from FORA, entitled properties, demolition of blight, and development of retail as well as housing developments. Marina needs FORA the least, and as such, doesn't really want FORA to continue in any fashion. The city of Seaside similarly has had pretty significant development and doesn't really see a need for any extension of FORA. The cities of Monterey and Delray Oaks have waited decades to develop their properties, and for good reason. When priority was turned to the redevelopment of communities more in crisis following the closure of Fort Ord. And it's the cities of Monterey and Delray Oaks that favor an extension of the legislative act and support Senate Bill 189 to allow the continued collection of revenues and the allocation of those revenues for habitat management, capital projects, and a limited staff for a successor agency. In parallel to that legislation, there's a process going on at FORA at the board level and at the staff level and at the administrative committee level to identify and determine what types of agreements should be developed and then entered into for specific purposes, whether it's the provision of water and sanitary sewer between Marina Coast Water District and the land use jurisdictions, whether it's the handling of base-wide habitat management through some type of either joint powers agency or successor agency and the municipalities, the land use jurisdictions, whether it's the management of capital improvement programs. And there's one capital improvement project that is radioactive, and that is East Side Parkway. And every time it comes up, all other rational conversation stops, and we focus on whether or not that project should or shouldn't proceed. And it's an important project, and it's an important topic. I don't mean to trivialize it, but it's super politicized. That batch of issues with capital projects will be addressed at the May 8th board meeting, and it will be addressed through the agreement that the consultant team that FORA has retained will develop with the land use jurisdictions and the FORA staff. And so there exists an avenue for us as a city and you as residents to provide your views and your input and your feedback to how capital projects are handled after FORA. Obviously, South Boundary Road is very important to us, and we care a lot about how that's handled after 2020. And if it ends up landing in our laps, then we want an agreement that is solid, that we negotiate between now and the sunset of FORA, that describes in very precise legal terms how the funding will be transferred through an escrow account, how the project management of that project will be handed off, and any other concerns we may have about the project. So that's ongoing through the FORA staff, these transition agreements and their development. They will certainly be brought back to this council for review and discussion. There's been discussion about having study sessions about them, which staff will fully support and drive when we get to the point where there's an agreement to study. And so I want to outline that as an important component of the transition planning going on at FORA. So bringing it back to the letter that is before council, that the staff recommends council support. It pertains to supporting Senate Bill 189, draft legislation submitted by Senator Monning to the legislature. Staff does not recommend supporting Senate Bill 533, which is separate legislation that is designed to govern prevailing wage and how it is paid retroactively and going forward on a whole host of projects that would make development and, frankly, any improvements on the former Fort Ord lands quite expensive. So the proposal and the letter before you strongly supports Senate Bill 189, and staff's recommendation to council is that you endorse the letter to be sent to Sacramento. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any council questions? Comments?
I just want to say that, Dina, you were amazing in your summary of that. I mean, all of that was extremely complex, and there's a lot of moving parts in just the way you described that. And I think that what was really important, differentiate, or something that you identified was the two parallel processes that are going on. Is that there's a transition implementation plan process that's being hosted by, or being hosted by a consultant, and then there is this legislative process, and I do think it's important to separate the two. The one kind of describes closer to what we might do out on Fort Ord. That would be the transition implementation plans, and the other is really just a funding mechanism, and that's really the SB 189 is that. And then the other point that I totally agree with and would like to echo is that different jurisdictions are just different, you know, and all these jurisdictions right now are fiercely advocating for their positions as they see best for their jurisdictions, and you can't fault them for that, but you can't agree with them, and that's kind of the position that I think all the jurisdictions is that Seaside and Marina are in a different place, and they're advocating for one position. Monterey and Delray Oaks are in a different place, and we're advocating for this, basically just continuation of the funding mechanism. Also, what's important to note is that in this legislation going forward is that there is a mechanism for the five of us to work together, and we will. I fully believe that post-FORA, what's being proposed, that 5-member board with also, we want to see an ex officio position for CSUMB. I think that will be a highly functional board. It'll be much smaller. I think it'll be less politicized. I think it'll be really down to the nuts and bolts. You know, Marina's, of course, concerns is blight removal. I think we can all sit in a room and go, okay, yeah, let's work on blight removal. Delray Oaks, you need habitat conservation. I think that is going to be, I think, a much more functional board than the 13-member FORA board going forward. So thank you for that kind of summary.
So I have a question. Why would we want CSUMB included?
Go ahead.
So the CSUMB recognizes, okay, first of all, they are, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are they a member now?
Yes.
Are they a voting member now?
Yes, they are. And they actually are quite a large landholder, and they've done quite a bit of development. They have they're kind of special in that they're also their own lead agency, their own development agency. They can do a lot of their own work, and they're right in the middle of the whole mix. And so it is I think important that they at least be sitting at the board, or at least sitting there, and we get their input. And they recognize, that's all they really want, is they just want to be at the table, but they also recognize that the rest of the landed jurisdictions, Marina, Seaside, Delray Oaks, and Monterey, really what's going forward on FORA will be, and the county, is most pertinent for those there.
Can I answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
What I would add to that is just to clarify that the letter we're recommending you sign does not have them as a voting member.
They're ex officio.
Right.
Ex officio.
I just want one more point of clarity. They are a land use jurisdiction, official land, FORA land use?
Yeah.
They were given money, or they were given land.
CSUMB?
Yeah.
They're a voting member of the board.
Okay.
I think they're housing. They have employee housing, which was donated.
Yeah, they have a lot of influence and responsibility. I don't know that I would go so far as to call them a land use jurisdiction. I believe that is probably not an accurate way to describe them.
Right.
But they're an important player.
Okay. And then just one piece of clarification for those of you out there that haven't had the time to read through all the letters. The difference that I found between Seaside and Marina and Monterey and Delray Oaks is basically the funding that comes in to Fora, currently, correct me if I'm wrong, is developer fees and property tax. And what Seaside and Marina want to do is not include the property tax. Okay, so that's one big difference. The other difference is how whatever monies are collected are then distributed, and there's 4 categories. One is water, one is habitat, one is transportation, and one is infrastructure. And what they would like to do is not include water and infrastructure?
I think so, or at least they have very strict or distinct percentages that they want allocated for that.
Right, but they don't even want to deal with these. They don't even want to deal with water, because Marina has their own water, right? Those are pretty significant differences based on where the city is coming from. So based on that, it does make sense that we do support this in this way. So I just wanted to clarify that I did a lot of homework, and it's not easy, but I love my little in and out category there. So yeah, that's. Any public comment? Great. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the letter to Senator Monty regarding the Fora legislation, SB 189.
Second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve a letter to Senator Monning regarding Fora legislation. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It goes unanimous. Item E, to reject development.
Madam.
Excuse me.
I have to excuse myself. I live too close.
Okay, thank you. So the reason that Council Member Gagliotti walked off the dais and Getzel is leaving right now is because they live within 500 feet of whatever we're discussing. So that automatically qualifies them or unqualifies them to be a part of this decision. So back to rejecting development proposals for 17.7 acre parcel APN 259-011-2517.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, the action before you tonight is to reject development proposals by Mr. Donaldson and Mr. Orozco for development on the 17 acres. The proposals were heard before council over a year ago, and the upshot is, and we have our economic development consultant here to answer questions or brief if needed. The proposals aren't, on the one hand, is not the right fit with Mr. Orozco's, and on the other hand, with Mr. Donaldson's, there are concerns about the viability of the proposal on the property. So given where we are with reviewing our housing element, looking at other business uses, the recommendation from your staff is that we reject the proposals and retain the flexibility of the city to either go out for an RFP for another type of use or potentially use the land for mitigation or simply retain it for as an asset for the future of the city.
Okay. Any comments? Council comments? No? Any public comments?
I'm Alice Green. I live on Saucedo Avenue, and I am really hoping that the city decides to not develop the 17 acres at all, leave it as a natural resource for the city. Thank you.
Any other public comment? I'm going to close public comment. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Donaldson for his passion, his talent, and his desire to bring a beautiful option to the city. And so thank you, Scott. So, entertain a motion?
I entertain a motion to accept staff's recommendation not to proceed with either two development proposals presented last March for city's commercial zoning parcel.
And I second the motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second to reject the development proposal for 17.7 acre parcel APN 259-011-2517. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. The last item of new business?
Yeah. There she comes.
Yes, please. Thank you. The last new business item is to announce Planning Commission vacancies. So we have our planning commissioners serve for 4 years. Every 2 years, half of the commission rotates off. And this June, we will have 3 positions open. I want to encourage any and all of you that may be interested in learning more about how the city works and plans and how fences go up or go down, to grab an application out on the table, or they're online. And do we have a deadline?
We'd like to, yes, May 23rd.
May 23rd. So, any council?
I just strongly recommend everyone to apply for it. It's a, no, I mean, being on planning commission is a really great, that's a really great role. I know that you have interest in government, kind of government work, and it's just a great way to kind of to get involved with the city and know kind of what's going on in the community, and you get to work with staff, and so I would just strongly recommend get involved and do this.
No. Actually, from all of our presentations this evening, it could be a really interesting time to be on the Planning Commission with anything and everything that may be coming up. So please get your application in. Any public comment? Any planning commissioners want to say how fabulous it is? I see a couple out there. Yes.
Let me just say that the current planning commission is phenomenal, and thanks for your service.
Yes. Okay. So we have no correspondence. Our next meeting date is Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 at 6 p.m. On that, we're adjourned.
Outstanding. Outstanding.